Hello and welcome to the Talk is Jeep Show. I'm your host, Art Aldridge, and this is a special Black Friday edition. We have a special guest, Pearse Umlauf, the CEO of Jeep Jamboree USA. There's a lot of new trips this year. I always look forward to the December 1 sort of kickoff. You got to get your registrations in to sign up for next year's Jeep Jamborees. And we spoke to Pearse about the new trips, what's coming up in the future, and a couple of surprises. And just a reminder, you can reach us at talkisjeepshow@gmail.com or on Instagram at talkisjeepshow. We're also on YouTube, and there'll be a YouTube video for this episode at Talk is Jeep Show on YouTube. I always look forward to the end of November, early December when Jeep Jamboree publishes their schedule. Always looking to see what's on there and it's new. I've noticed some things new this year, but why don't you tell me what's new on the schedule this year?
So for the schedule this year, we have Vermejo, which is new. This is a trip that's in the northern part of New Mexico on a private piece of land that's 550,000 acres. It's incredible. Ty and I have been there to scout it twice, and just getting on the property is remarkable. I mean, this is a piece of land that has 19 fishable lakes and 30 miles of fishable streams on property, 4 climate zones. We just couldn't not do something there because when we were there, it was so special. We couldn't believe that a place like this existed in the United States that we could actually access. So that we had to bring that to fruition. We internationally, last year we sampled out a Himalaya trip. And so it was a very quiet sample because frankly, we didn't know how it would go. So we didn't want to make a splash and then have egg on our face for this. So we sampled it with 6 brave couples who decided to go on this trip. They were the guinea pigs and they had a great time. I mean, obviously a lot of challenges for the trip. They said that on a daily schedule, their schedule changed 1,000 times a day because of nuances in China and just how it ran. But they had a phenomenal time. So we decided to offer that again this year. Mongolia is new for us this year. Again, it's going to be more of an exploratory trip. So those people who have a bit more of an adventurous spirit are going to want to join that one. And then we have 2 other new ones that we're really excited about. One is over the Alps. We did this a couple of years ago. The challenge was, though, we could only get compasses. This year we have Wranglers and Gladiators, which makes a big difference for it. But you go from the France side over the Alps into Italy. Extraordinary scenery. Reminds me a lot of Uray and Telluride area, the San Juan Mountains. And then we have a trip that's more historic that we've gotten a lot of interest in. It's the D-Day trip. It is a trip that follows Patton's old footsteps through the war, and you see a lot of the old World War II sites. We start in Paris and end in Frankfurt, and it involves a drive through underground caves where the German forces used to have an entire city underneath the French countryside, and to drive in these are just incredible. To see kind of parts of the history and the writings on the wall, and I mean, you're going through these old French farmlands where there's there was trench warfare. So you see these trenches and you feel the heaviness of World War II, there, 100%. So those are some of the new trips that we're looking at for next year. But and we switched up the Southwest Badge Hunter trip. I think you had done the Moab Odyssey with Fred Williams. We had done a Southwest Badge Hunter trip this year, but it was a night of camping, a night at a lodge, and a night of camping. We were also during a time of the year it was kind of cold, so we got some feedback that said, "Hey, we'd love to bring our spouses with us, but nobody wants to camp for 2 nights." So we switched it to hotels. So it's 4 nights, and Fred is going to lead that trip. Fred's going to be our lead guide on the Southwest Badge Hunter trip. 4 nights, and I think five Badge of Honor trails we'll be able to knock out. So those are the new kind of trips. Then we have a couple of these nuanced trips. We have two night runs at Easter Jeep Safari in our partnership with Red Rock Four Wheelers. We got the permission for them to offer these trips during their Easter Jeep Safari trip. So they'll be joining us out there as well. And then we have a Northern Baja adventure trip as well. So some new things for us going into 2026. And then we changed the Academy program a little bit to offer, we're calling it an advanced or a 2.0. We had a lot of feedback from consumers that had done the Academy saying, we would like another level up, something a little bit more intense, something a little bit more, arduous. We want harder trails. We want to learn more about recovery, and we want to learn more about spotting. One of the things that we've noticed over the years is, like, you be an okay driver, but a good spotter makes the difference of you getting through a really difficult obstacle. And you can be a great driver and have terrible spotting and still have that problem, have a massive problem because somebody guided you in the wrong. So one of the pieces we really want to instill in some of these people is the confidence level, of spotting people through difficult scenarios. And even to this day, 28 years later, I still, if it's a real tricky situation, you even scratch your own head sometimes and go, man, am I selling a lot of bullshit here? Do I know what I'm doing? Right? Because you want to, you question yourself a little bit, which is probably a good thing. But you definitely want to take a step back and know what you're doing is right. So, yeah, those are the things we're getting a lot of feedback right now from the night runs at EJS, the advanced training for the academy, the Vermejo trip, the international, the D-Day trip. Those things are getting a lot of attention right now. So
Let's dive a little bit into some of these trips. So the
Vermejo,
for Mayho.
yeah,
So let's talk a little bit about that. And I know there's like one of the things that I always look at is the itineraries or whatever, but some of them are a little vague.
yeah.
So is there like, can you shed a little more light on that trip? Like, is that a more of a, it seemed like it was a little more of a recreational trip than a wheeling trip, but give me whatever details you have about that.
Yeah, it's definitely more recreational than wheeling. However, the trails, it's really not trails, it's dirt roads and trails that we navigating on the property. So to give you an idea of how big this property is, I mean, it's 920 square miles, right? So this thing is, I mean, when Ty and I were there, when we first did the trip, we drove out with somebody that met us in Raton, New Mexico. We met this guy, and he's a guide, and he said, "Follow me." And so we were behind him in our vehicle, and we drove an hour driving 50 miles an hour. And we get to this field, and Ty and I just aren't feeling it. We're just going, man, this is not, I don't think this is worth it for us. And the guy literally pulls out a map that's 4 feet tall and 5 feet wide, and he goes, "We've covered this much ground." And you recognize the magnitude of this property. And it took us a full day even to kind of grasp the concept of how big this was, because we had traveled all day on this land, and the guy was like, "Okay, at the end of the day, we only traveled in this section." And you're like, you got to be out of your mind, right? And some of the unique features about this property, I've said it before, and it's the only way I can describe it, it feels like you're on your own national park. So when we were out there, we happened to be in a herd of bison, right? So just us, our vehicle, we're surrounded by a herd of bison. We happened to get a phone call from a business partner of ours who was in Yellowstone at the same time. And our guy goes, "Well, how's it going?" And he goes, "Oh, it's terrible." He said, "I've been stuck in traffic for 4 hours, not moving because the tourists are taking pictures of the bison," right? He said, "I've literally not moved." The contrast was we were amongst this herd of bison, and it was just us. And our guide was like, "Do you want to get out and take pictures with them?" And we're like, "Yeah." He's like, "Just stay 25 feet away from them." And so we were in this herd of bison. We leave camp the next morning. We run into 8 bears in an hour. And he goes, "Yeah, we think we have 250 bears on property and 30 to 40 mountain lions." And he goes on and on about the wildlife. They said that the wolf will make its natural reintroduction to that property in the next year. And so we ran into elk and bobcats, and I mean, it was flourishing with wildlife. And so it it was one of these experiences where you're camping on the side of a lake looking at a white cap mountain. And one day the guy looks, he goes, "Can you see the white mountains in the distance?" And you kind of, yeah. He said, "Can you see as far as your eyes can see in the plains?" And you go, "Yeah." He goes, "All that's our property." And you recognize the magnitude of it, but there's a lot of history on the property. So there's a lot of, like the timber that was harvested off that property went into the railroad systems in America. And so there's the old townships that were there that left on property as well. So the property is just incredible. But we wanted to create an experience for people that could enjoy some of the Jeep lifestyle activities that were there. So this isn't for everybody. If you're looking for hardcore off-roading, this is not the place to go. But if you're looking to literally be amazed at what is still in this country, the history that's there and the preservation of some of the most, I think, inaccessible areas, because this is private land. You can't, one of the things that we've been trying to create over the last couple of years is experiences that you wouldn't typically go get on your own, right? So putting these together, I mean, just to set foot on the property is $1,500, and they're very protective of who goes out there. So, we've rented a lodge at the top of the Alpine, and it's not cheap. I mean, it's 20,000 a night, just to rent the lodge, and it's a minimum of 3 nights. So, I mean, you could do some of the math that it costs. And now with that comes an entire team of people that will cook your meals, and then you get to go do activities on the property. So if you've ever wanted to learn how to shoot at 1,000-meter range, they have a range there. You can go out with a guide and do that. It's very specialized. If you want to fish in one of their stocked lakes, you can go fish and pull out rainbow trout that are massive, right? If you just want to drive around the property and see some of the wildlife that's there, you can do that. If you want to go hiking, horseback riding, it's all of these elements that I think for some of us who are getting older, uh, I've done the Rubicon, I've done harder trails. I want to still be remote and still have some accessibility to some lifestyle activities that I haven't maybe done before. I get older, I go, I'd like to go fish a little bit. I don't take the time to do these things anymore. Maybe when I was younger, and then you get wrapped up in work and everything else. But it's only 8 couples, and there's in this big lodge on the mountain that we're renting is 8 in-suite facilities. So each bedroom has their own in-suite bathroom, but it's bison heads on the wall. It's very rustic, very Americana.
It looks
But
amazing. It
yeah,
looks
but you're gonna
amazing.
and the conservation efforts that they've put in there are incredible. So it's really about an experience, and it's something that you couldn't get on your own. Similar to the Iceland trips or the other trips that we're doing, or even some of the Rubicon trips that we do. This is something you can't go out tomorrow and just manufacture on by yourself. And so that's what we're interested in doing. Some of these signature trips, they've taken on that flavor. It's like, what can we do that people couldn't do on their own, and give them an experience where they walk away from it and say, that was really unique, and I wouldn't be able to do that on my own. So,
That's great. That's a good explanation. The other trip I'd like to get a little more detail on is the D-Day trip.
yeah.
Again, you read it, it sounds great, but is any holes that you can fill in on that?
Yeah, so not a lot of off-roading, obviously. It's much more of again, similar to Vermejo in that it's very experiential based, very much focused around World War II history. The cool thing is that I remember Jake and I, when we scouted some of these caves with our, it's in partnership with our group Jeep Experience, who assists us with all of our overseas trips. They took us over there and they took us in these caves. But when Jake came back, they kind of marched these Jeeps down the Champs Elysees, right in front of the Eiffel Tower, and they were, and it was just amazing to have the pictures of these vehicles, these modified Jeep vehicles, coming down the main drag in Paris was really cool. And so, but being in the caves and seeing some of the history, a lot of our team are history buffs, and they're very interested in that. If you ever look at anything like Bastille Day that happens in France, it's an incredible honoring of American soldiers who really helped, win the war against Nazi Germany. And it's, the French culture is tremendously welcoming and honoring. I've never been, so I really want to go to this area. But on Bastille Day, they'll put American flags out and fly. And it's not on Bastille Day that we're going, just to be clear about that. But they put all the flags out to honor the American soldiers that lost their lives to ensure their freedom. And it's heartwarming. And an older generation of people definitely interested in this trip because it was part of their history as well. But to drive through and see some of these, as Thomas, who's our the lead of Jeep Experience over there, the principal there, he said it's very heavy. You're visiting areas that are very heavy, that have a lot of historical significance in the area. So you are do some off-roading, and off-roading in the caves is incredible. It's not a long experience in the caves, but it's when you get in there and to see it, it's phenomenal, and so you will be doing some off-roading. It's that German, countryside mud that's there. It's similar to like what you see at East Coast wheeling for sure, but it's much more of a history lesson. And only 6 vehicles are allowed on this trip, so it's 6 couples. So it's very small. We've had a tremendous amount of interest in these trips. from what we can tell, from kind of an understanding of the interest we have, we think these trips will sell out in seconds. A lot of these, we just too much interest in. The reality is, will we do more? If we get the interest that's there, we want to be able to share these experiences with people. This is for us. It's look, we're in a business, and the hope is to make money at the end of the day, right? But we don't create these experiences with that as our priority. We create these experiences of, could we, as Ty would say, do we get to do cool guy shit? That's what Ty says, and apologize for the language, but the goal is to do things that are rewarding to put together. And are we constantly being relevant in with our audience of producing something that is worthwhile, and so we're constantly driving the team to say, can we create experiences that create a dialogue and give people who attend something of value? And so we take a lot of passion in ensuring that that's what comes across to our consumers. And hopefully that this trip also, the D-Day trip, will give that to a lot of people.
You're true to your words. I've done a number of your trips, some of them signature trips. I mean, exactly what you said is exactly what I've found to be accurate, even on the non-fancy overseas trips. You offer an experience that's different, sometimes unique, even like the Catskill Mountains Jeep Jamboree, which I do all the time. It's a local, jamboree for me, but that's an opportunity I don't get otherwise unless I do it through Jeep Jamboree because those are all private lands.
It's all private trails. Yeah, Gateway to the Cumberlands, 19 private landowners, to make that happen. I mean, Texas Spur, private land, so there's a lot. Main Mountains, all private land. These are, experiences that can only be curated through the program. And we take a tremendous amount of pride in ensuring that the landowners are recognized for this, because we couldn't do it without them. You have a tremendous amount of local trail guides, as you know. If you've been to Catskills, I mean, those are the guys who will yell at you all day long. So if you're not a New Yorker or an East Coaster, you wouldn't know their sense of humor. But they but again, Mike Taylor and Adam Rivas, I mean, the Taylors and the Rivas family have, so selflessly allowed us to use their properties over the years, and a lot of people on them. And East Coast wheeling is very different. I grew up back east, Massachusetts is very different, and the culture of it's very different. But it's fun to go have an experience you wouldn't have on your own. Again, you can't go out and create that. So we do our best to, I don't know, ensure that we can, like I said, create experiences that you wouldn't typically go out and find, in your local newspaper or your yellow pages. So.
Yeah. The Adirondacks trip,
Palmer Brook.
Palmer
Yeah.
Brook, that's coming back for a second year. How did that go with the first year, and what did you discover?
Well, the new trips always start pretty small. We like to keep them small because, first year trips are tricky. You typically go in with about 75% of everything figured out. And as Mark used to have a line, we don't believe in miracles, we rely on them. That sometimes takes place when you're starting a new trip. So there's a lot of unknowns. Steve Risk, who runs our Coal Mountain Jamboree and Coal Mountain Academy, he helped us out a lot on that, getting that off the ground. And we use a lot of local guides, again, in the area. For us, it's nice to offer a new location for a multitude of reasons, because again, like you said, back east, there aren't a lot of public lands to go on. So for us, this is really important. You know, it takes Jeep Jamboree sometimes, it takes a Jeep Jamboree to open the door to a lot of these locations, because we walk in with $5 million of liability insurance, and we walk in with a guide team, and so a lot of these landowners are sometimes apprehensive if you walked up to them and say, hey, can I do this event in your property? Well, why? What's the protections in it for me, and what am I going to make out of it, essentially, right? So we are able to bring both of those to the table, which opens up opportunities for people to go off-roading. The hope is to increase the size of this event this year. We always like to start small and then expand that when we feel comfortable that we can manage the size of that event. So there's a lot of land up there. More trails have to be developed. So until we can get teams on the ground, and as you know, up in that upper part, of where that event is, I think it's upstate New York. Right? Am I correct me if I'm
Yeah,
wrong? It is.
upstate New York.
Yeah, it's in, way up the tip. I mean, it is on. When I look at this, it's on the tip of Canada. I think some of the land goes up there. The problem is, from now until late spring, they won't be able to access trails because of the snow. So it's a very short window that we're allowed to be up there. So developing trails and ensuring that those trails that we developed are maintained for next year is a lot of work that has to go into that to even expand the event. But we're excited about it. Killington used to be a favorite event of everybody, but Killington, owned by a massive corporation, was, for years gouging us on the price point, and we kept passing that price point to the consumer. And I hate doing that, to be honest. Even though it's popular, I don't like doing that. I think it's a terrible practice, and we were really up in arms about it. And so that's why we pulled out of an event like Killington, because at some point, it becomes cost prohibitive to do that and continue to pass the buck onto the consumer. We don't, I don't know. I don't like that. If we can avoid it, we do our best not to. So we're so excited to have another one on the East Coast that's starving for access to trails. So.
What's the one jamboree that you would say is the most unknown or maybe underrated?
Underrated? Hmm. Well, I'll tell you a few of the favorites as I look at this list, and it's a big list. I mean, I think between this and academies, we have 57 events this year. I think, the ones that are my favorite. Sorry, we have a big list. Um, my favorite, obviously my favorites are Rubicon and Ouray. Ouray was my first experience out when I came out from the East Coast, my first real trip out west, and seeing the mountains of Ouray and that sand, it just blew me away. Um, I personally love when we put the Southwest Badge Hunter trip together, it was my favorite because it covers some of the most diverse landscape, and I like that. So when you go from Moab to Ouray and Telluride, you go from the Red Rocks all the way to the Colorado Rockies, and again, not just the Colorado Rockies, but the San Juan Mountains. And if you're unfamiliar with the San Juan Mountains, it's the most jagged area. It's known as the Switzerland of America for a reason. And so I like the shift in you can be in this location and 3 hours later you're in this location, which is diametrically different, right? The trails are different. I like the small towns too. So I like Moab. I like the coffee shops of, the Moab Garage to the jailhouse to, all these little pieces. You can go get coffee and a square donut, and then you end up in Telluride and you're eating at the butcher and the baker, having a great coffee and a pastry. Ty and I always joke about how we enjoy those pieces sometimes the most of that makes the trip so unique, is part of being in the community. So I really like that. Some of the trips though that I think are underrated and for the not the wrong or right reasons is like Arch Canyon. Arch Canyon, I think people don't understand behind Arch Canyon how much has been why we keep that trip. We keep it only to exercise our public right-of-way rights, out there. So that Arch Canyon, we've fought for so many years to keep those trail systems open from environmental groups that have tried to shut them down for many, many years. And this goes. I mean, the last story we had where we had the final kind of last hurrah before the state of Utah, I think, won a lawsuit against the environmental groups there was that we went to go get a permit from BLM on those trails. Now, the routes there are considered an RS 2477 where they're public right of way. And the problem is that nobody controls the right of way. The counties usually control the right of way. And so BLM had written, I think, us a letter saying we're not issuing a permit. We called the local county, and the county said, well, it's not their right. It's our right of way. And we'll gladly have you out there. And the BLM wrote the county a note and said, if any of these folks come out there, we'll cite them for trespassing. And the county said, if any of your BLM officers show up, we'll have them arrested. And the county escorted us on that trip with police officers front and rear. And
Wow.
BLM showed up and said, we're not here to create a problem. We're just here to observe. And after that, we got a permit from them to do that. And they actually said to us later, they said, wow, you guys are a very respectful group. Well, of course we are. We have a vested interest in doing it right and coming back every year. So but that I don't think people understand that the fight that we keep that jamboree alive solely for the purpose of keeping trails open for people to access. There were right-of-ways in this country called RS 2477s that were designated for people to migrate out west. And the goal was it didn't matter what land it went over, you had a right to use that route. And these rights, luckily, go back long before sometimes the inception of Forest Service and the inception of the BLM. We deal with that issue on the Rubicon Trail all the time as well. Who has the public right of way? And the Rubicon Trail was designated a trail back in, I think, 1897, or the first minutes in the county, when it's all El Dorado County, before the inception of the Forest Service. So, Forest Service try to insert their rights to these routes, and you just go, it's not your right. It's a public right of way, and we have the right to use it. So, we always talk about Rubicon being Rubicon, and it is, but the reason why, again, another route that we keep open, and we keep doing it every year, because we want to make sure we have the right to access to these trails. It's important to us.
Well, I will say this: I did the Rubicon Expedition Extreme in August this year. Fantastic trip. The guides were so not only knowledgeable, but I guess the best word I can say is authentic, in that they're multi-generational, family history at the Rubicon,
Yeah.
and just a great experience. And I was hoping, I put a new Atlas transfer case in my Jeep. I was trying to have it done before Rubicon, and it didn't come in time, so I did it with my stock transfer case. But I did the Catskills with the Atlas, and now I want to go back and do the Rubicon
Yeah.
again.
Well, and the guys that guide Rubicon are just incredible. These guys are phenomenal. And they, like I said, they grew up there, so they know every bit of that trail. They know, they're like, oh yeah, that rock was over there last year. I mean, it's very personal, when you get into it. And Rubicon on top of it is just, I think, stunningly beautiful, right? You have the Sierra Nevada mountains that are surrounding you. Of one trail. And trust me, it's taken a lot to keep that trail open. We're constantly fighting to keep that trail open, for a myriad of reasons that I won't get into on this show, but it's always up against some hardships of closures and reroutes and all this other stuff that don't make a lot of sense. So, yeah, we write big checks every year to attorney groups to ensure our rights as a community get upheld, and it's an important fight to keep going. So,
Keep up the fight there. That's a trip that I think every Jeep owner should do at one point.
I agree. So it's a fun trip. The mountain lake, the river, all makes so much fun.
What's something in the works that we might see next year? Something that you're working on?
So we just Ty and Sean and I just scouted a place outside of Los Angeles called Tejon Ranch. It's a 270,000 acre piece of property that's in the Grapevine, between LA and Bakersfield, and it's gorgeous. So we're constantly looking to innovate the program, to change the program, to offer something new for people to be out there. One of the things we wanted to do, and we just couldn't pull it off this year, was this coming year is the 250th anniversary of the United States, and we wanted to do a trip that kind of went across the country to more major monuments, like start in New York at the Statue of Liberty, right, with a tour of that, and then you head down to Washington, and you do the Capitol, and you see that. But you also pick up off-road trails along the way, and you work your way, essentially, the Battle of Gettysburg, and you work your way down all the way to, like, Oak Ridge, where they developed the A bomb, right? The nuclear weapons, and then you end, starting to go to the Alamo, and you work your way up through the Rockies, and then you hit all these national monuments, right? Um, I'd like to hit Mount Rushmore, and then work your way over, and then end at the Golden Gate Bridge. These are, for me, they're really iconic pieces that were important to me growing up, in terms of what was the history of this country was. I mean, you look at innovation. We built the Empire State Building in 417 days. We can't figure how to build an exit off an on-ramp in 417 days, right? And, like, the country had just a different sense of pride, that we maneuvered with. And I think some of those pieces, I mean, this day and age, could you imagine OSHA with, hey, we're going to hang guys off a cliff, and we're going to put faces on a big rock? I mean, oh my God, it would take 25 years to do that. I mean, same thing with the Golden Gate Bridge. It was built in like 4 years, I mean, just, again, huge innovation as a country. And these kind of monuments that symbolize our country, I'd like to kind of do a trip where people can visit them. Do like a 2-week road trip where we just go around and visit these. And you hit some off-road trails along the way, but it's more about going as a group of people that have the same mindset, and sharing the same similar experiences and doing that. So we'd like to do something like that in the future as well. And then, Mark's trip is coming up. The celebration of Mark's 50th anniversary of the Expedition de las Americas coming up in 2029, it'll be 50 years, and we're hoping to put some special initiative
Oh,
together
that
for
would be
that. Yeah.
fantastic. That would
So
be
not
fantastic.
through the Darien, but
All
some
right.
epic journey that would kind of honor what that type of exploration was all about. So
Great. Excellent. Well, Pierce, I appreciate your time. I know that going to drop this episode right before the release to the general public of the Jeep Jamboree dates.
good.
So hopefully we answered some people's questions. I know I had a few that you did answer. So I appreciate your taking a few minutes.
Hey, well, thank you very much, Art. We appreciate the patronage and support that you've given the program. And yeah, I hope that people ever have questions, reach out to us. We're this is a we have this time of year we definitely have a lot of people inquiring about these trips, and um we know that a lot of these trips will go quickly, like the Urays, the Moabs, the Main Mountains, the Greenbriers. They go pretty fast. So the only tip I can give everybody is get on a wait list. I mean, we've seen wait lists. You can be 300 down that wait list, and it comes around by that trip time, you'll inevitably have people cancel, and all those people ahead of you have made other plans. So get on the wait list, and we usually take wait lists and give people discounts for just being on the wait list, for going to buy clothing and stuff like that. So get on a wait list. It's worth it. And if you really want to go, the likelihood of you getting in by the time the trip happens, particularly if it's in the fall, is pretty likely. So
I did two wait lists for Jeep Jamborees. The first one was my first Jeep Jamboree in Killington. I got notified about a week before the event,
yeah,
and
seems about right.
it was excellent. And the Rubicon expedition, I was waitlisted. Wasn't sure, originally about the dates and my work schedule, and I got in. So
Yeah.
you're definitely right. Get on the wait list.
Yeah, no, people don't recognize it. They feel disappointed, but if they're willing to do it, and they're willing to stick with it, and it comes up last minute. We also implemented, I think, text message notifications this year for people on the wait list. So we did get some complaints over the years of people not being able to get, they check their email. 24 hours goes by. This way, they get a text message that accompanies the email. Hopefully, gets more people to react to that and get into the trips they want. So.